Thank you, Mr. President. Well, members, while Senate Democrats endeavor to waste time again with a frivolous effort here, which is really composed of, we're seeing the development of the Democrats' witch hunt of President Trump happen here on the Senate floor in the state of Minnesota. You're seeing it, members. It's happening in the resolution before us. I'm bringing actually an amendment to that resolution, Mr. President. If somebody needs castigating for violating our laws and failing to protect the people of our state, it's Governor Tim Walz. And members, this resolution brings forward language that recognizes the failures and the deliberate refusal to act by this governor on the week of May 26, 2020. If you'll remember, at least 3 Minnesotans died and many more were injured in massive riots in the city of Minneapolis, the largest city in the state of our state of Minnesota. I think everyone remembers it well. The rioters burned down hundreds of buildings, destroyed at least 1,500 businesses in the city. They looted, went through and vandalized and destroyed public, personal property, including the complete destruction, Mr. President, the complete destruction of the 3rd Minneapolis Police Station precinct. That happened here in the state of Minnesota, in our state, the state we're responsible for. We're responsible for the laws in this state. It happened here, Mr. President, in Minneapolis. It lasted days. Enormous cost to both private citizens, governments, over $500 million of damage, Mr. President, as they looted and burned down the largest city in our state. Over 600 arrests, the second most destructive incident in the history of our country. Here, under the Walz watch, under the watch of Governor Tim Walz, he watched as Minneapolis burned. He ignored the severity of the riots and the destruction that were happening as he sat on his hands for 4 days, Mr. President, while our largest city burned down. He sat and cowered in his home with his family, some of who cheered on the rioters as they were surrounded by security detail. Not something that you would characterize as the efforts of a courageous or responsible leader. That was our governor, Governor Tim Walz, in this state, Mr. President. He failed to organize and coordinate with proper law enforcement agencies or the leaders of Minneapolis. He attempted to negotiate with the rioters rather than calling out the Minnesota National Guard. As the people of Minnesota were saying, Governor Walz, call out the National Guard, he sat on his hands for 4 days. Mr. President, the morale within the law enforcement community has suffered greatly because of the inaction of Governor Tim Walz. And Mr. President, back then in 2020, this body, the Minnesota Senate, conducted a study or a report on the 2020 riots. In that report, it said, quote, Governor Walz had the ability and duty to use force and law enforcement to stop criminal violence, but he did not. Instead, as Minnesotans urged him, Mr. President, to bring in the National Guard, and he ignored their calls, he dismissed the National Guard, saying they were not massively trained troops, but instead were merely 19-year-old cooks. That was the rhetoric and the cowardice of Governor Tim Walz here in the state of Minnesota, Mr. President, in 2020. This amendment would amend the resolution to properly direct the Senate's attention on an issue for which it has already conducted a study and a report. And it would direct that Governor Tim Walz apologize to the citizens of Minnesota for his irresponsible and horrible behavior. It would require that Governor Tim Walz apologize to the law enforcement community of our great state, the law enforcement community that he has demoralized. And lastly, Mr. President, this resolution would transmit the resolution and vote to the incompetent Governor Tim Walz. Thank you, Mr. President.